Courtney said, I am the coordinator of library services for the Lincoln Public Schools in Lincoln, Nebraska. Our school district serves about 42,000 students in about 60 schools. That's kind of an average there. So we're a pretty large district in the Midwestern United States. And one of the things I do is I coordinate the work of our MOSAIC committee. And our MOSAIC committee selects, reviews, and curates an annual diverse book collection or list and accompanying resources that we publish on a website. So I'm really excited that you're here to learn a little bit about the MOSAIC. And it's really my hope, not that you would replicate necessarily this work, but that you would leave here connected with resources that will help you promote diverse books in your own libraries. So here we go. So this board you can come back to again and again if you'd like, but if you notice right here is a bit.ly for our for this presentation. And actually I'm going to copy that address real quick and drop it in the chat for you so that you can get to this presentation and follow along if you would like. And that way you can come back and catch all these other links that we'll talk about throughout the presentation today. Okay. I was just looking at my notes to make sure I didn't miss something there. All right. Okay, so the MOSAIC, I kind of touched on this before, but just for like a kind of a definition for the work that we do is the MOSAIC is a committee that selects, reviews, and promotes books that authentically and realistically portray the diversity of all students from both historical and contemporary perspectives. And although we are in Midwestern Nebraska, we are a very diverse school district. And so we want to make sure that all of our students in our schools have access to books that reflect their lives and their experiences. The committee that that does this work is comprised of LPS staff and volunteers. We are largely made up of librarians, but we also have teachers on our committee, and we have community members. And many times our retired librarians stick around and continue to do this work as well. And so what the committee will do is they are charged with the task of reviewing multicultural books and helping us select the best books to be included in our MOSAIC collection each year. Okay, so I love the history of this work. I think it's really unique and pretty cool. It all started with a teacher, a group of students, and some librarians. So in the early 90s, a group of students in Norfolk, Nebraska pushed for multicultural legislation. I found one source that said that this actually was prompted by an incident where a group of students were banned from an establishment in Norfolk because of their race. And so along with the teacher, they lobbied for multicultural education in our state. And that led to a law called Rule 16, which was the Nebraska Multicultural Education Act. And it eventually rolled into a different rule, which is Rule 10, and it requires libraries to provide current and unbiased information about African American, Hispanic American, Native American, and Asian American cultures. And that was what the rules stated. We have kind of changed some of our terminology and broadened the cultures that we like to represent in the MOSAIC as well. In response to Rule 16, the Lincoln Public Schools formed their very first multicultural committee, and they kind of named that committee the MOSAIC, and they named the work of the committee the MOSAIC, and they created the very first MOSAIC collection of diverse books and exhibits. And that exhibit of books was a small display in the district office where teachers and community members and district office personnel could look at the books and review the books and choose books for instruction and learning and to share in libraries. So this is an example of what the display or exhibit looks like when it's set up at our district office. Now, This is not what it looked like in the 90s. In the 90s, there were not near as many multicultural books out there to even put on display. And the committee at that time worked really hard to find good books. Publishers are getting better and better at this. And so you can see, like last year's display here, we had lots and lots of books that were reviewed and received positive reviews and were included in our display. So that's the 2019, just some photos of the books set up at our district office. Okay. All right, so the mosaic has definitely changed since the 90s, and you can kind of see that even in that photograph. But I'd like to just share a little bit about how it's evolved over the years and where we are now, and how we've come to do the work that we're doing currently. So in 1991, we had that first display in the district office. And basically between 91 and 2011, that display grew and grew. So every year, the Mosaic reviewers would review new multicultural books for that year, the most current, the best of the best, and they would put them on the display, and it would be put out in the halls of the district office for everyone to look at and enjoy. Then in 2011, a very significant event occurred in Lincoln, and that is our district office building actually burned to the ground, not much left. The books that were housed at district office burned. And so everybody who worked in the district office they were moved between two different locations and buildings in the city while a new district office was being built. Because of that, we couldn't house the books in the district office. There was no place to put them. And so they had to find a home. And of course, it made lots of sense for the books to begin traveling to schools. So our department would take the books and pack them up and they would go from library and then back to district office and then to another school library and then back to district office and to another school library. And the school librarian would set the books out for the students and the teachers to peruse and look at and make suggestions for their library collection in that school. It was super cool. I hosted it once when I was a building librarian, and there was only one small drawback, and it was really hard to check the books out to students and teachers to read from that traveling display. I think our librarians really worried about the books getting back and getting sent to the next school. It didn't work really well in our public access catalog to do that. And so the books kind of were just on display, and they were a curation tool, something that librarians could use to make sure they were ordering diverse books for their libraries. In 2016, our team added some interactive components to try to get students and teachers to engage more with the books that were on the display, so they weren't just looking at them, but actually really getting involved with them. And so we added QR codes to the books. They were just kind of pasted on the front of the books, and those QR codes would go to other videos or book trailers or more information about the topic in the book. And then there were iPads set out where the students could scan the codes and learn more about the books. We had makerspace activities with the Mosaic, like cultural building blocks and VR headsets, kind of your low-level VR headsets, iPads with music from around the world. And so trying to get our students and our community to engage more with the Mosaic books, to entice them to read them and librarians to buy them for their libraries. And then in 2018, this is when I came on board, we really got to thinking about, this is great, but our ultimate goal isn't just to provide a curation tool for our librarians, but we want our kids, our students, to be reading diverse books and the books that are on the Mosaic. We want to get these books in the hands of our students. And at this time, between 2016 and 2018, our district began to embrace and put their funds into an ebook provider, a few ebook provider sources. And so we decided, hey, let's make the display digital. Let's put it online and add links to the ebooks and links to the audiobooks and link those extension activities that were on the QR codes and the book trailers and promote that so that our students would also be able to not only see the books and recommend them for the libraries, but actually read the books. And so that is where we are now with our MOSAIC work. You may be wondering as we kind of go through this, especially if you haven't heard of the MOSAIC before, is like, how does it all work? How do they do this? And the first step is actually our selection process. So how do we pick the books that our reviewers review and that ultimately get included in our MOSAIC? So the books are actually selected by our team, our library services team. So usually it's mostly me and another woman that works in our department. And we scour the reviews and we look for the best of the best multicultural books. And then we purchase those books. We still purchase them in print, but also in if they're included in the display, we get the ebooks and audiobooks when we can. And then our committee members will read the books and write up a review, and they review the books using rubrics that have been created by the committee. And those rubrics help them judge the quality of the book for authenticity, for representation, for literary quality, all of those things. And if the reviewer gives the book a positive review, which actually is it's on a star system, so 5 stars is the best of the best. So if the book gets a 4 or a 5 star, it is included in the MOSAIC collection for that year. Okay, so a little bit more detail about how we find the books. Last time I presented, I was asked a little bit more about, how do you find all these books? And so this is a bit of what our process looks like. We start with professional reviews, especially School Library Journal, Booklist, and Kirkus. Actually, I used to read Booklist and in Mackin, our vendor site, where I could actually compare all of those reviews in one place and decide if it should be a book that we review for the MOSAIC. We have so many diverse books now that I can almost select books by just reading the starred reviews, because we have to be pretty picky now. So generally a book will have at least 1 starred review before it's ever even considered for inclusion in the MOSAIC. But that hasn't always been the case. Kirkus is a wonderful review source in that Kirkus will always name the protagonist and the secondary characters' culture and their race. And that really helps us know if we're actually even looking at a diverse book. And let's see, and they're also, I think, sometimes the most critical when it comes to reviewing books. So I really do like to look at Kirkus. The first line or the last line of the review is very helpful. We also just find books through ads. I mean, I can read School Library Journal and find 3 or 4 MOSAIC books every month just by looking at the publisher's ads or ads that come through my email. I get a lot of email from publishers, and sometimes I find the newest and best books because the publisher sent us an email about it. Also, following people on social media and Twitter. Following other librarians who are posting about books really, really helps us find books as well. And then we also look at some specific publishers and imprints. And these are some of those publishers and imprints that we will browse through to select books to be included and reviewed for the MOSAIC collection. We used to, we specifically prided ourselves in looking for books from small publishers, and that was definitely back in the 90s really important to the work of the committee, because that was where we could find diverse books at that time. Okay, I try to click on my slides, but I have to click down here. All right, the committee review. I kind of talked about this before, but what they look for is accuracy, authenticity, content, perspective, characterization, setting, and literary quality. So also one of the things we also look for is that the protagonist is a person of color or from a diverse background. And then our reviewers use rubrics for evaluating the books. And if you go back to the slide, the corkboard slide, there is a link, and we'll go back to that in a minute, to those rubrics that were created. We have a elementary fiction and nonfiction rubric, and we have a secondary fiction and nonfiction rubric that our reviewers use to help value, to rate books for inclusion in the MOSAIC. Let's see. Here are some things we think about when we're reviewing and selecting books for the MOSAIC. We like to have books that are written by a person of the culture depicted. That's extremely important to us. We want a protagonist is generally who is not white. There are times, though, where we have a white protagonist and secondary characters who are not white, and the book can be included, but usually, I'd say 99% of the time, the protagonist is not a white person. We do have, we look to ask, do we have contemporary and historical representations of culture? I think back to my work and my study of American Indians in literature. I wrote a paper on it, and one of the most important pieces was finding Native American titles with contemporary characters. So not just historical fiction novels or narratives that were set in the past, but contemporary novels so that kids can see themselves in the books today. So we want a balance of those books. And then we also want to avoid books with the white savior trope. And that's really something to look for. That's one way that, like, To Kill a Mockingbird has been criticized. And so that is something we want to avoid in the books that we're selecting for the MOSAIC too. All right, so this is the link to our MOSAIC digital display, and you're getting this information as we are about to launch the 2020 MOSAIC. So this is the time of year when we roll out the new books that have been selected by the committee and begin promoting the new MOSAIC. So you can go to lps.org/go/mosaic, and you can see our website. And it's a LibGuide. I don't know if any of you have used LibGuides, but that's how we organized our MOSAIC site. And on the home page, you'll see the history of the MOSAIC described here, our book selection process described here, the 2020, the members who reviewed the books for this year's collection. These are the links to the rubrics I was telling you about. So if you want to see how do we evaluate our literature for the MOSAIC, the rubrics are here. And maybe that's slow loading today. Yeah, I have to zoom in a lot to see this. And whoa! The first column really deals with, if you'll see, these are the excellent standards. So written from a culture of the, from the person of the culture depicted, relevant research, portrays culture in authentic ways. So those are some of the things that we are looking for, all the way down to even literary quality, the language, the word choice, all of those things are part of the rubric. I will tell you that some of our committee members can review books. They have been doing it for so long without really using the rubric, but when I was a reviewer, and especially a new reviewer, that rubric was so helpful in deciding how to evaluate a book. This box shows you a link to our online catalog and search terms for previous MOSAIC collections. So I can go to our online catalog and search MOSAIC even 2020 and see all the books that are included in our collection this year. This is a great place to print a list or use for collection development. So if you want to take a look at these books and consider them for your own library collection, this is a great way to find the books. Oops. Let me go back. One more. And then up here, this is super exciting. Right here, we also use Sora, Overdrive Sora, to host most of our ebooks and audiobooks for our students. And so we make a special collection on Sora. And I'll click on that too, just so you can see it. Hopefully I'm logged in. You probably, most of you won't be able to access this because you are not, you don't work for the Lincoln Public Schools or attend the Lincoln Public Schools. But this is where we put all of the books in our ebook and audiobook collection for our students to be able to read and access. It always gets to be top, front, and center in Sora for our students. And then we also create trailers, highlight videos for the MOSAIC. And these are intended for our librarians to show students when they're teaching a group of students, or to share in their libraries and get them excited about the MOSAIC and using the MOSAIC to find new books to read. And actually, these are kind of the drafts of this year's videos, but I received them in email today and I thought, oh, I'm just going to put them up there so that you guys can see them. They're almost done, almost perfect. Well, as perfect as they're going to be. And so these are pretty fun, and I'll share my sound so that you can hear and see a little bit of this. See if we can go full screen.
It's time to see what's new on the 2020 MOSAIC collection. You'll find the newest books, the best and most popular books, and the most amazing stories about people just like you. You'll find so many new books on the MOSAIC. Check it out today.
And so what happens at that point is that there are 3 or 4 book trailer videos that we've pulled from the web that are for books, the advertised books in the MOSAIC in our collection. So we don't create the book trailer videos, but we just pull them together to share with students. And so we make an elementary video, a middle school video, and a high school video. And then these are bookmarks and posters about the MOSAIC too. But to get to the heart of the MOSAIC display, you want to click on the elementary books, middle school books, or high school books links. And I'll just go right smack dab in the middle here and look at the middle school books. And now you can see that on our website, we've grouped our books by culture groups. So here are American Indian books, Middle Eastern or Middle Eastern American books, Latino or Latino American, Asian American, African American, global, and kind of a catch-all, multicultural all, and then Holocaust genocide, because we also have a separate Holocaust genocide display that travels to schools, and it still travels except this year. As you look through the display, you can actually scroll through and see all of the books. But what you really want to pay attention to is, oh no, don't do that. Right here, this takes you to the online catalog record for the book, where it says read the review. That's where you can click and read the actual written review by the MOSAIC committee member who reviewed the book. And you can see it received 4 stars, who reviewed it, and their review. They also include their suggestions for extension activities on their review. And then what we'll do is we link those extension activities as well. So this one is a Choctaw Nation History and Culture website. You'll notice other links may include something like, let's see if I find one. This one has quite a few extension links, but many times you'll see also book trailers, as well as borrow and read the ebook. And these ebook links go right to our Sora ebook collection, where they can borrow the book if it is currently available. This one happens to be checked out. And so you can look at everything here except borrow and read the ebooks or borrow and read the audiobooks, because you are not part of the Lincoln Public Schools. But the rest of this is open for you to read and explore and browse. And so let's see, this one has a book trailer. So those are the extension resources, and every page for each grade level looks about the same, except we have different books on leveled books there. And then we have some professional books linked, and also all of the links to previous year's displays, which we started in 2018 with the website. So they start in 2018. So what I wanted to do was actually give you some time to look through the MOSAIC website and take a little bit of a deeper dive and see what is there. So if we had a larger group, I was going to put you in breakout rooms. We don't have a very large group. So I think what I'll do is I'll give you just a few minutes, 5 minutes or so, to browse the MOSAIC site. And then we can come back together and talk a little bit about, what books stood out to you? What resources did you find? What questions do you have? How can you use the MOSAIC collection in your work as a school librarian? And how can you promote diverse books in your school? And then we'll talk a little bit more about how we promote the MOSAIC books too. So, all right, so we're going to talk a little bit about how we promote the MOSAIC, but also just ways that you can promote diverse books in your libraries. So we always, we start with physical displays. That's what we all know how to do as librarians. We put books out on display. Kids see them and they're more likely to choose the books that are on display. So Courtney talked about being very thoughtful about those books. And so we definitely encourage our librarians to have those multicultural MOSAIC books out on display. And that's why we do our display at the district office too. Give people the chance to pick up the books and look through them and read a little bit of first chapter or a section of the book to decide if it's appealing to them. And then the digital display is the other way we began to promote diverse books. Is we really want our librarians to share this website with their students. Like you would share information about the Scholastic Book Fair, we're talking, let's share the MOSAIC. Let's get them to the website, give them time to browse the books on that site, show them the highlights videos so that they will get excited about reading diverse books and books that reflect their lives. Actually, I should have brought this photo. I have a photo of a student when his librarian at a middle school in Lincoln shared the MOSAIC. She actually showed them a specific ebook. And this particular ebook was written in Arabic and narrated in Arabic. And so when she began to play the book, that student got right out of his seat and he walked straight to the projector screen and was like, oh my goodness, this is my language. This is my book. This is for me. And so just giving our students a chance to see that, hey, we have books that you can connect with, because we know our favorite books are the ones that stick with us. The ones that resonate are the ones that they connect with some kind of experience or struggle that we've been through in our own lives. And so that is another way. We have our ebook collection to promote this as well, making that front and center. We've linked the MOSAIC display on every single school library website in the Lincoln Public Schools. And we will do social media posts about the MOSAIC on Twitter, mostly Twitter, because that's all we have as a district. And then I give presentations. So one of the ways that we really boosted our usage was just a presentation that we gave one spring. And we had the opportunity to share the MOSAIC and the SORA collection with our multicultural liaisons in each building. They come together for a meeting. It was super thrilling to see them get excited about the MOSAIC and then go back and tell their school librarians about it. And so the librarians knew about it, but and then we saw our usage just skyrocket after that meeting and checkouts on our books in SORA. So that's one of the ways that we, the kind of an exciting thing about our promotion. So again, this is just another picture of that collection on SORA. And then this is an example of what I was talking about. So March was when we gave that presentation. And you can see how the checkouts of the MOSAIC books just increased there and then kind of dropped back down. We don't have stats for this year. I asked for them, but they weren't going to get them for me on time. But you can just kind of see, we roll it out in October. And so there's a bit of promotion here, and then checkouts kind of dropped down and they went back up after that meeting in March. So that was super cool to see. So let's see. And then just lastly, this is all I have for you, is that we like to thank and recognize our reviewers on the MOSAIC committee. Courtney's on the MOSAIC committee now, but she will be named next year. So these are the individuals who reviewed the books for this year's display. I would like to point out one of our weaknesses. I don't normally like to point out weaknesses. One of our weaknesses is a lack of diversity on the committee itself. And I really started thinking about that this spring, and how it's important that our reviewers are people of color, and and people from diverse backgrounds. And we have some reviewers who are, but not enough. And so one of my goals this year, and probably next year too, because COVID is kind of interfering with this goal, is to recruit more reviewers from a variety of races and cultures and backgrounds and experiences. And I think that right now it's harder to recruit those reviewers because their lives have been turned upside down by teaching remote learners and in-person learners and everything involved with teaching during a pandemic. And so while I could recruit some this year, most of them will say, can I wait until next year? So that will be about a 2-year goal at least for us to just kind of broaden our committee members. And there are incentives for librarians who review and are on the committee, and we want to offer those to non-librarians who are willing to do the work as well. So with that, that is the Mosaic in the Lincoln Public Schools. Pretty cool thing that we've been doing for a really long time. Are there any more questions?